Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
5 years ago, the Power of We Symposium was created to provide a platform for kids from all sectors where they could have a safe and comfortable environment in which to share both their joys and concerns. The Power of We Symposium is proud to have served over 250 kids throughout Romania when we took our mission global back in May of 2023. Now, 2 teams of amazing volunteers from both the U.S. and Romania embarked on an 8-day Legacy of Hope tour, bringing encouragement and hope to not only the kids of Romania, but also the adults who support them, and also to over 100 kids here in the U.S. who contributed handwritten letters of hope to our Romania mission of 2023. Now, this year, we are proud to provide this opportunity yet again in October, and we are super excited to up our game. New venue, 750 kids this time, and we want to see you there. We're looking forward to meeting you in person at this year's event, which promises, as always, incredible speakers, amazing content, and of course, some of the greatest kids on the planet. So, mark your calendars for October 24th, and we'll see you here in Chicagoland for the Power of We Symposium 2024. This year's theme is Always Together, Never Alone. Tickets are available now on Eventbrite or at powerofwesymposium.com.
On July 4th, 1962, I found myself in the lost and found of mankind. Just because something finds its way to the lost and found doesn't mean that it wants to be there. Just because something finds its way to the lost and found doesn't mean that the person who lost it doesn't care for that lost item.
You are writing moments that people will learn from, grow from, and heal through for thousands of years. Together, we are co-authoring a unique moment in time. That DNA, those fingerprints, they're going to be gone. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But it is your story that they will tell for thousands of years. But only if you leave it. Things that do not serve you must go. The longer you wait, the more time you give them to trick you into serving them. 22 homes in foster care, everything I wore as a scar, as a shame, things that started like Velcro on my spirit. After just a few months, then years, then decades, I had believed myself into believing that they were indelible tattoos. Sometimes we have to be broken down to appreciate the view once we start getting up. I want you to leave this place and know that you have been changed. Why? How do I know it's true? Because each of you has just changed.
last time. How expensive do I have to be? Need I spell it out before you get it, baby? Show me your soul, and honey, I'll show you mine. I'll show you mine. Oh, I'm standing right here holding up a sign, shamelessly displaying my state of mind. But you walk right past me, pretending like you don't see what's yours for the taking tonight.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm in a singing kind of mood, clearly. I'm so excited to be here. Not just because it's Thursday and we're almost through the week, but because when you and I come together, when we come together, wow, spiritual magic. There's a promise connected to that guarantees us that when two or more of us, or more than one, we come together, same mindset, same heart set, we're here to get something done, i.e. easing suffering somewhere in the world, sharing our stories, and uplifting each other in every way possible. So that's that. That's the bell of purpose. Here every day has been for about 8 years, and I ring it on purpose because just like that bell has a ring to it, you guessed it, so does the truth. I don't want you to miss it. Flat ironing your hair or feeding the baby oatmeal. Just know that when you hear the bell, uh-oh, that was a bell. Something's out there. Come and get it. Okay. Also, Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo, my sidekick, is getting her roots done. She has a day off. In other words, that's code for she's in the dishwasher. So I'm using this. Fueled by positive energy. Yep. And coffee. I guess that is positive energy, especially if you ask Juan Valdez. Remember him? That commercial with the donkey? Uh-huh. Yeah. Was that really him? Or was that an actor? So anyway, so excited today. Not we, my husband, Dr. Brian, for the last, when I go to bed at 8 p.m., he watches shows, and I came downstairs one night to get some water, and he was in the middle of a Little House on the Prairie run. And I was like, when did you, he watched it from the beginning, right? So anyway, I started watching with him. And how many of you remember when Mary lost her sight? One of the biggest episodes ever, according to, and we know because last year we met Nellie Olson. I forget what her real name is, but we know her as Nellie. We met her in person when I went to meet Mike TV from Willy Wonka back there. I was with Mike TV. Brian was a couple booths down at Nellie's booth. So anyway, remember this?
Adam, everything's all right. I'm right here. We're all safe and sound.
Oh, man. I am so ashamed.
There's no need to be.
This afternoon, I was so afraid I couldn't even move.
Adam, it happens.
But being a coward in front of my wife.
Adam, you're not a coward.
No.
We all get scared.
Okay. That was when, it didn't really get into it, but they're both blind. Remember, Adam and Mary met at the blind school. Boom, 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 boom. So, and they got married, but then Adam got his sight back with left Mary in the dark, literally. And so, just imagine, though, if you could, being in that situation or being a product of that situation. Well, that's exactly what our guest today is going to come in and talk with us about. How, well, first of all, she's written a book which tells the love story, and it really is a love story of her parents who met in a blind school or at a blind school, both blind and got married and did wonderful things and raised a family. And the title of the book, if I can just get over here too, here it is. The Sound of Her Voice, My Blind Parents' Story by Mary Harper. And she's here today to tell us why she wrote it, why it was important to write it, and to give us just a glimpse inside this beautiful story of her parents and how they didn't overcome. They just did it, period. So, and big message inside this story. Put your hands together, which means put some hearts on the screen virtually. Get to your feet virtually, because here she comes, our guest for today, author Mary Harper. Good morning, Mary. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks.
Good. I bet you thought you were never going to get up in here.
Well, it was fun watching.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Yeah. Every once in a while, my voice will crack, but I've got water and stuff, so I'll be fine.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I want to get right to it. So what I do or like to do most of the time is to I'll pop out for about 60 seconds and give you a chance to just pour into the audience, kind of set the vibe, the tone, if you will. Tell them whatever you want about yourself, just like a verbal bio for 60 seconds. And then I'll come back in and we'll get started talking about this book you've written. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Take it away. All you.
All right. Well, I'm Mary Harper, and I was originally from Muncie, Indiana. And that's where my parents lived for many, many years. But the most interesting part, actually, when I started writing this book, I was thinking, I'll just write a memoir about myself, what it was like growing up with blind parents, because not many people have two blind parents. And then I started writing and realized, this book is about them, their stories, and I didn't want it to get lost. So it took me a long time to figure out how to tell their story, but I did it, and I'm really happy that I did. And I don't know if I'm stepping on some of Lauren's toes.
Oh, no, you're good. You're
Okay.
good. So let's just start. So, okay, what year was this when your parents, when this story began for them?
Good question. 1913 for my mother, and 1914, just a few months later, for my father. They were both born with glaucoma. And it's sort of interesting the way each family reacted to it. My mother was born on a farm in central Indiana, and very much farm folks who worked hard and were very practical, very pragmatic people. My dad was born into a family of Italian immigrants.
Oh.
So he was first generation Italian. That's where the Pironi comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So my grandparents were both immigrants, and then they had one son named Charlie, and he was normal, no problem with Charlie. And then there was my father, who was, as soon as he was born, and as soon as my mom was born, they realized there was a big problem. Their eyes were greatly enlarged. When the babies looked at them, it's like, whoa, there's something wrong. So that's the beginning of that story.
Yeah, they were probably like, what's wrong with that baby's creepy eyes? Because when a baby, right. Now,
Yeah.
Did you know this? Did you know that the eyeball is the only organ that is exactly the size it is when we're born as when we die? Your eyeballs, and you wouldn't think that adult eyeballs would fit into a little baby's head.
I know.
They're the same all along. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
I do. Okay, so let's for just a moment, the glaucoma story. Glaucoma.
Okay.
Now, today, you don't hear of people going blind from glaucoma, do you? Well,
you
it happens, but
if it's not treated, and mostly it occurs in adults, so it's pretty rare for children to have it. Even more rare for them to be born like what was that, 4 months apart and about 60 miles apart. So for those two, the odds are, what are the odds that they would meet?
because it was rare in and of itself.
Yes, it was.
And here they were right around the corner practically.
Pretty much.
Not knowing that they
Yeah.
were going to find their way to each other. It's beautiful. That's
It
beautiful.
is a beautiful
That sounds like something divine going on to me.
Yeah, there's a reason they met.
Mhm.
And I write about that in my book, of course. long stories. They had wonderful childhoods. You can't believe how many adventures they had, particularly my father with his older brother, Charles. They got in a lot of trouble. They
Oh,
did a
I
lot
had
of
a
things
older brother.
together. They were just very brave. So I tell about some of those in the story about how the building down the street was going to be a YWCA, and there was nobody around after hours. So there were no construction fences like we have today. And they decided, well, let's just climb to the top, see what's up there.
Yeah.
And so they did. And it was all open. I mean, they were climbing on steel girders, and I would never have done that.
How many siblings are there?
For my dad, he only had
No, for you.
Oh, sorry. For me, I'm the youngest of four. My oldest sister is 10 years older than me, and then I have a brother and then another sister.
So by the time you came along, 3 others had started learning everything about steering the course with 2 blind parents. So they probably took some of the slack up with you. But imagine your oldest sibling. Do you ever talk to them about what it was like for them to be the first?
Many times. It was very sad for me when my sister passed away. She had breast cancer and died about 10 years ago.
Oh.
But before then, I took a lot of notes. She lived in Indiana and I was in Texas. So we did a lot of phone calls. And she told me, and I'll never forget, she said, Mary, we grew up in 2 different families. Her experience was very, very different. We had some commonalities, but she had a lot more pressure put on her, I think.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Not that my parents wanted her to be a babysitter, far from it. But I think she sort of naturally would notice that, what is Rita doing over there? My other sister, her favorite thing when she was like 3 or 4 years old was to go to the curtains and start tying knots in the strings. And that used to drive my mother nuts because she tied very tiny knots. So it was hard to get them out for my mom.
That sounds like a little OCD going on. You know what I mean? Those little things we do. But one of the things that you and I talked about in the pre-show interview that I thought was very interesting was that you mentioned, I was like, well, how'd you guys get around until somebody was old enough to drive? And you said you guys walked everywhere.
If it's too far to walk, we rode our bicycles or we took the bus. And
wait, your parents could ride bicycles?
My mother never did, but my dad loved to ride. We had a tandem bicycle.
Okay, so he was in the back and someone was steering.
That's right. And think about it. He's totally blind. He doesn't, and I might be 8 years old. I finally had long enough legs to be able to ride that in the front.
Right.
And he trusted me with his life. Being able, this man knew every street in Muncie, Indiana. He knew where the stop signs were. He knew where the stop lights were. So if I was riding, and you know how hard it is to get a bike started again. So if there's no traffic coming, you just sort of slide through the stop sign. And my dad said, wasn't there a stop sign back there? Well, there's nobody coming, Dad. You need to stop at all stop signs.
How did he know?
He just knew. He's incredible. I don't really know, and I never really thought to ask. He was my dad. He just knew everything. And there's along with that, there's a story that he was waiting on the bus one day, and a man came along and said, "Hey, Mario, would you like a ride?" And Dad said, "Sure." And my dad's seeing eye dog, of course, just loved to go for car rides because that was sort of unusual for that dog, any of our seeing eye dogs. So he hops in the car, and they're driving downtown to work, and they're chatting away. My dad says, "Hey, Fred, I think you're going the wrong way on a one-way street." And the guy says, "Oh my God, you're right. You're right." And he was so embarrassed that a blind guy could tell him that he was going the wrong way on a one-way street.
He could hear it.
He just felt it. He just knew. And but he also had to be very, very aware of his surroundings. And I was realizing that as I was writing this book, how important it was to him. Walking with a seeing eye dog, the dog doesn't know where you want to go. You have to tell the dog. You have to know where you're going. You have to know the blocks, and the dog is trained to stop at curbs, and that make sure Dad was always listening, making sure there's no cars coming, and off they went.
Yeah.
But yeah, that story got told to a local reporter. They were friends, and so Fred told this guy, and the reporter guy wrote an article about it, and that got picked up on the wires. So I have clippings from all over the United States of Mario, a blind man, tells man that he's driving the wrong way, and it's just
How
fun.
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I want to get into this other thing because it's so today. And my husband and I were talking about it when we traveled a few weeks ago, and I was like, "Do you think there are people with service dogs? Because you see them like comfort dogs and whatnot. You see them everywhere. And my husband's a therapist, so he writes those letters for certain people so they can get whatever it is they have to go through. So, but he says, yeah, there are a lot of people who just want to take their pets with them, and so they get them certified as a whatever.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. Back when it was not commonplace to take your pet in and out of restaurants or stores or this, do you remember any prejudice that you guys experienced because your dad's dog could not come in there? People just weren't aware.
It was by that time it was the law. They had to allow seeing eye dogs in, although some restaurants gave him a hard time. And Dad told me about this. I don't think I was there, but it was a restaurant, and they said, "Sir, you can't come in." And he said, "Oh yes, I can. There is a law about that." "Oh no, you can't come." So he left, and it just like whatever. But yes, there has been some, but mostly what's interesting is the opposite. Oh my goodness, especially his last dog. His last dog was a huge-headed yellow lab with the floppy ears and such a sweetheart. He's beautiful. Everybody wanted to touch him. Do not touch a seeing eye dog. They're not for pets. So I had to make a little sign that, in bright colors, "Do not touch working dog." And that helped a little bit, but especially in the later years when my dad had cancer and we were at the cancer hospital, people just always loved that dog. Come up, "Can I pat him?" Sometimes they wouldn't ask. We're in the elevator, and a doctor who should know better reaches down and pats the dog. I'm like, oh boy.
Why is that?
Because if that dog would, first of all, it's a distraction. If you get petted and the dog is not working, the dog is not paying attention to his master. He's distracted by this other. And then Dad always said, well, if this dog ever sees you again, he'll go right off over there to see you and take me off course. So, yeah,
so that's why you guys couldn't even play with them. I remember you were telling me before.
You're right. We never played.
Was it like a family pet? And you said,
no,
not at all.
Not at all. Dad did all the care of the dog. Mom was always afraid she would trip over a dog. And perhaps in the early years she did, because if a dog just decides to plop down on the floor, she doesn't know it's there, then she could trip and fall.
Yeah. So were you guys allowed to have a pet?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you had yours and he had his service dog.
Yeah.
Interesting. And one other question about that. It's a little off topic, but I'm just curious. Was a blind person responsible for paying for their own seeing eye dog, or were they given
that's a good question. I think at that time at the seeing eye, I don't remember my dad ever saying anything about money and money hardship. So I'm pretty sure there was some financial help with the seeing eye.
Tell everybody about, now there was some space between the age of your parents.
Some space.
Oh yeah, like he was older than her, right?
No, she was older. She was born in September 1913. He was born in January of 14.
So just a year.
Not even a year. It's just
so
September.
I thought, well, what am I not remembering right? When they were in school, they were in different.
Things were different because my mother went to a public school. She had some residual sight, and it went slowly away. Okay. And my dad lost his at age 4. So when he was wanting to go to school because his older brother was going to school, they went to the local parochial school, and the principal said, "We don't know what to do with him. We can't teach him. So he can't come to school. We don't know how to teach him." So Dad was devastated. He wanted to go to school when he was 5, 6 years old, but couldn't. And luckily, my grandfather found out about the School for the Blind in Indianapolis, which is about 50 miles away from Muncie. Okay. And so then Dad went to first grade when he was 8. So he was older. And then by the time they graduated from high school, they were 20 years old. So they were much older than the average student. And mom was different. She went to public school until she couldn't see anymore, and the kids were teasing her. And it was just, she'd come home with headaches every single day and crying. So luckily, my other grandfather found out about the school in Indianapolis, and she went there when she was 10.
Okay.
So she was older.
So when she got to the school, she was 10 and your dad was 11.
No, he was closer to 10.
Closer to 10. So tell the story about how he heard her voice, which is the title of the book.
It is. Well, first of all, when you think about it, how do blind people fall in love? You can't see that person. You can't make eye contact with them. You don't know what they're wearing. You don't know what they look like.
Right.
So the most important thing is the voice. And that's why I titled it The Sound of Her Voice, because that's what my dad first fell in love with. Back in the 4th grade at the school, they were very, very strict, segregating the boys from the girls. They were on separate sides of the classroom. They had separate playgrounds, separate dining rooms, separate dorms. They weren't supposed to talk to each other. So that was an interesting experience for them because they couldn't have any social interaction. Anyway, mom comes she moves up to 4th grade in the winter time because she arrives and they put her in 3rd grade. She learned Braille so quickly that they said, "You're ready for 4th grade." So she comes in, she gets a seat that's right across the aisle from a very quiet, sort of studious young man. And one day she has to recite a poem. And so she stands up and she recites it. And as she's reciting it, my dad, future dad, on the other side of the aisle was listening intently. He memorized her voice and what she said and kept that in his head for 80 years, 90, long time.
Wow.
It gave him comfort. Whenever they were separated or whatever, he would hear her reciting that poem, and that gave him so much comfort. It was so sweet.
That is sweet.
Yeah.
That is sweet. Now, he didn't make a move on her, clearly, at that young age. But as the years, when did they actually come together as a couple?
High school.
Quite a few years down the road.
Yeah, right. And of course, they were still very much. The school did not want any romance. I mean, you think about it. What are 2 blind people going to do if they get married? Or, God forbid, have sex or have children? I mean, they couldn't possibly take care of them. So they made sure that nobody.
Keep them apart.
Yeah, keep them apart. So
Wow.
My parents figured out a really clever way of communicating with each other, and it involved sending notes home with their laundry. Every week, they would send their laundry home to their parents and enclose a Braille note. Then the one mother would send that Braille note to the school, and because it would be addressed it, and she would address it, and then vice versa for my dad. So they were able to get notes back and forth through their laundry.
Aww.
It is sweet. And
it is sweet.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how people dreamed back then. The world had a different, and you've alluded to this a little bit already, how they didn't really give much credence to the possibilities of what a blind person could do in their lives. So therefore, the roads weren't open. It's almost like what we've seen happen over the years as far as handicap accessibility to buildings and things. They had to fight for a lot of that, the American Disabilities Act. So let's talk about this piece. When your parents went to the blind school, what were they teaching them to be?
Good question. So in high school, the girls were not, first of all, taught mobility. They did not know. They assumed that girls would just stay at home and, I don't know, sit at home and do nothing. The boys were taught mobility. They were taught how to get around. They would go downtown. They could, on weekends, they could take the trolley downtown and walk around and shop or do whatever they wanted to do. But the girls, they had to go with a group and a chaperone, and they were not taught. So my mother never learned to walk by herself. She never would go next door to my other grandparents when I was growing up. And I realized, she always has to have someone with her. But that worked out, and she was happy to be home. But my dad, he was really good with mobility. Okay, so what do they teach? They were teaching the boys how to cane a chair, how to make brooms. My dad sold brooms in high school. That was fun for him.
Ooh, that sounds exciting.
I told you, and they were like 25 cents each or less. So I mean,
Wow.
you're not going to make any money doing that. They taught music. My dad was a really, really good piano player. I was like, whoa, I heard him play once and he never played it again. But I was like, Dad, I didn't know you could play that well. And he said, well, I don't play well enough to suit me. And what would I do anyway if I pursued piano, play in a bar somewhere? I can't make money doing that.
Right.
So caning chairs was one. And basic things that...
Making brooms and caning chairs. Oh, my.
Yeah.
But your dad shocked everybody by doing what?
Well, by that time he was in love. And he knew he wanted to marry my mother. And he asked her, and she said, nope, not going to marry you until you can prove to me that you can earn a living and support us. She did not want to live off of charity. She didn't want to live off the parents. So, well, what does he do? He's got an older brother who has been his mentor all his life and who he just adored. Guess what? The older brother decided he would go to college and then on to law school. So that's what my dad decided to do. My mother also went to college. She said, oh, I didn't really want a degree. I just wanted to take classes. She just liked to learn. So then his older brother went to law school at Notre Dame. So what did my dad want to do? He wanted to follow his brother. So my dad became the very first blind graduate of Notre Dame Law School.
Wow.
Yeah.
The very first blind graduate of Notre Dame Law School.
Right.
I wonder how many have come through there since.
I don't know.
That's a great question. You ought to find
it is. It's interesting because I wrote to the school, to a couple of different deans and so forth, and I never got an answer.
Never got an answer.
No, I was like,
But it is not unusual today to see an unsighted person doing just about everything.
Right. Well, they've got computers now and all this technology that makes it much easier. When my dad was going through school, the state paid for a reader. So he would have to wait for the reader to come and sit down and open up those big, thick textbooks. My dad would be taking notes on Braille. He had a Braille typewriter, so that would be faster than just punching each different dot.
Yeah.
But think about it. Reader leaves. My dad can't say, hey, turn back to page 287. I forgot what that was.
Right.
By then it's gone. So he had to memorize everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He wasn't just mediocre with his grades and whatnot.
Nope. He was an honors graduate. Yeah.
Just so for one step that the normal person or the sighted person had to take, your dad had to take numerous.
100%. And I write about that in the book, about how getting dressed in the morning, it takes time. He has to feel his shaving, and he has to feel for his clothes. Where is everything? And it's just slow. And then figuring out, he didn't have a dog back then. He didn't have a dog till after he graduated. And his brother said, you needed a dog. So Dad said,
I thought this was funny. Tell the audience. When I was in the pre-interview with Mary, it was like I just couldn't stop asking questions. It was so intriguing. So you guys, you're going to want to get your hands on this book. There's so much inside of it. But tell them, I asked you about, and this shocked me, how you would say your mom would know what you were wearing or if your skirt was too short.
Yeah. How does a blind mother know what her daughter is wearing or your son is wearing? My mother knew every single piece of clothes that I had, and I know she knew everybody else's because she washed them, and then she would go and she'd hang them up. We never had to hang them up. She just did it. I'm like, okay. Now I realize that was a lot of work. Why didn't she make us do that? I don't remember. Anyway, there was one time that I needed a white blouse, and I was looking all over, couldn't find it. Mom, where's my blouse? Look in your closet. I'm in the closet, can't find it. Well, she was downstairs washing dishes. You're going to make me come all the way upstairs just to find that white blouse. Well, Mom, I need it. So she comes all the way up the stairs, goes in my closet, and goes like this once, twice, and pulls this out and says, Mary, is this it? And I said, yep, that's it, Mom. Mary, you have two good eyes. Why couldn't you see that?
How did she know?
She just, by fabric. and the shape of the stuff. So she would feel the fabric first, and if she remembered that fabric, then she'd check like the collar and to see where the buttons were, or if it was just a slip over, whatever. She just knew, and she remembered all the colors because my mom remembered colors. She didn't go blind completely until she was 11. So she did remember what colors were. My dad, at age 4, when he completely lost his sight, he wouldn't remember. He knew intellectually fire trucks are red, but he really didn't know what red was. So he didn't know how to put things together. So my mom would always get his suit together and put a suit and a shirt on the same hanger and then drape a tie around it. So he would have it all there together.
How did she know what tie went with what shirt?
When she bought the ties, somebody was with her, and then got home and said, and we said, also, almost everything went with everything else. She was very careful about that. And the same way with socks. I can't remember if they were all brown or all black, but there were no mixing of socks because she couldn't see them. So it would be so embarrassing if my dad went to work in one black and one brown.
Yeah. I remember when I saw the Ray Charles story, and his socks had little embroidered dots on them, so he could feel blue was 1 dot, brown was 2 dots, black was 3 dots, or whatever, so he could feel them, because a lot of times he didn't have anybody to help him do things. Now, what was mealtime like?
Interesting. She was so organized. She did all the cooking, and then she would have one of us at the table. We had a little, we called it the breakfast room. And I can remember my dad would have the dog with him sometimes, but then my other sister Rita, who was rather mischievous, would be feeding the dog. That was a big no-no. You never, ever, ever, ever fed the dog at the table. And my dad wasn't happy about that. And so he took the dog upstairs, and the dog never came back down for meals, because Rita wouldn't, if she didn't like something on her plate, she would just flip it to the dog.
Who didn't do that? Right.
Well, you can't do that. Anyway,
so one of the things, talk about when you guys finally got a car, because you had to wait for somebody to be able to drive. And then also, was there ever any time when the family sat and watched TV?
Oh, sure. Oh, my goodness.
What were your parents doing? Just listening?
They would just listen. And most of the time they weren't really interested, because it's hard to follow TV comedies or cartoons. That we're not a fan of cartoons, but what kids watch. But she wanted us to be a normal family. We had pictures on the wall. We had our school pictures posted up on the piano in the living room. We had lots of magazines. They read magazines all the time. We got
Braille magazines.
Braille magazines, right?
Wow. Did you ever learn Braille?
Nope. I know one letter. I know A, because that's one letter, 1 dot.
That's probably what I would have done. So what about things like Christmas morning?
Fun.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, how do you shop for, what, you know what I'm saying? Like when you shop for your parents, did you have to describe everything as they opened it, or?
Sure. Or they would feel it. As far as even wrapping presents, I was just thinking, my sister Ann must have done all that for me, because I'm, so much younger, that she just did a lot of the work, like wrapping things or telling my mother about colors or, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always an exciting time.
Oh, amazing. Because I've asked you to bring in an excerpt to read us today. So we're going to come up to that here in a minute. But before we head there, I just wanted to ask you, what was it like as a young girl going to public school or private school, however it played out? And then when kids would find out that, where did they point and stuff? There's the girl whose parents, she's got blind parents. So were kids pretty good about it?
Yeah.
They can be cruel. Was
can.
there any type of bullying, or how did society treat you all as a family?
School was different because everybody knew who my parents were, and it was not a problem, especially elementary, because it was a Catholic school for elementary up through 6th grade. And we also went to that church. So everybody in that church knew the Peroni family, as we would walk to church every Sunday morning. And of course, usually the dog would go. So yeah, we were quite noticeable. Now, I do remember little kids, if you're out in public, they would be pointing at my dad because he had one really big eye and nothing over here because that eye burst when he was 4. Yeah, that's in the book. It's fairly graphic, but
Oh my goodness.
yeah, so he looked different.
I
My
didn't even
mother,
think, is that, oh, I guess it is possible. Oh,
oh yeah.
okay.
Well,
So,
what happens is the pressure on the optic nerve
oh,
got so great, and
oh,
it just got so big. And
oh, okay.
but the story ends that he said, "Mom, I feel much better now. It doesn't hurt."
Oh, oh.
Yeah,
And that's in the book. Wow.
yeah, that's in the
Wow.
book.
He was 4.
Yes.
Boy. Oh,
Right. Yes.
okay.
Now, so
So,
he and before he was 4, he remembered having a couple of different operations because his mother wanted a miracle. She's very Catholic, very devout. So she figured she'd take him to all these different doctors. Unlike my other grandparents, whose doctors said, "There's nothing you can do. She will go blind. Do not waste your money going to different places and doctors because there's nothing they can do." So they took that as their word and they worked on helping her and making her the happy kid and doing things. Anyway, but my other side just took my dad for an operation and really botched what little sight he had. So he didn't want any more operations, but my mom was very aware of her enlarged eyes. And as she had my sister Ann, she worried that kids at school would find out and see her and laugh or bully her a little bit.
yeah.
So you talk about bullying. That's when my mom decided to have her eyes removed, and she had glass eyes that she would wear. So you couldn't see. I mean, when I was just little.
Wait.
Huh?
You're telling me your mom, just so the kids wouldn't be bullied or treated poorly by other kids, went and had both of her eyes literally removed and replaced with glass. Now,
Right.
if that isn't sacrifice.
You know what? It wasn't for her. She wanted it. She'd been wanting it for a long time.
Oh,
She always felt very self-conscious of her eyes. So when she got it, she was very happy. You know, I didn't know any different. She was always wearing the glass eyes. And so for me, there was no reason for me to look her in the eye. I couldn't see her emotions. They were just static blue eyes. So it's hard for me. And the same way with my dad, there's nothing I could learn from his eyes. So I still have a hard time maintaining eye contact with people. It's because I learned to not look so much at their facial expressions. Some I did, some of their facial expressions, but not at their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would listen. So I'd hear the tone of their voice and I'd go, "Oops, I'm in trouble now." You know?
I'm surprised, Mary, that there's not, you know how they have Twins, Ohio, where all the people go that are twins.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised they don't have something for children who were raised by 2 blind parents.
I don't think there are very many of us.
That's what I'd be curious to know. How, you know, it sounds so rare.
It is rare, and I really don't know. Right now, there's maybe more because it's easier.
It's easier.
Yes, yeah. When I grew up, it was. I mean, I was the only one I knew of.
Wow.
So
how interesting. Okay, so did you bring us a little excerpt from the book?
Yeah, I don't know how much time do I have because
we have a little over 10 minutes. So
good. Can I read 5?
Yeah, I'll duck out, sit over here, and enjoy the show.
This is one of my favorite chapters. It's called Geography Lesson. "Mario, you may join Jane at the map table," said 6th grade teacher Miss Campton in her crisp, no-nonsense voice. "You are to feel each state, read the name, and put it back in the proper place." 13-year-old Mario's heart leapt with joy. He couldn't believe his good fortune. This was his first opportunity to speak to Jane, and even more fortuitous, he could show her his knowledge of the state of Indiana. He'd been interested in geography since he was old enough to learn the names of streets in his neighborhood. On his trip to Italy at age 5, he'd surprised his mother by memorizing every town that the train would pass through on its way from Muncie to New York City. Longitude and latitude were fascinating concepts to him, and he learned where the major cities were located according to those numbers. Even though he was too young to leave the school unescorted, he learned the names and patterns of the Indianapolis streets. He wanted to know all he could about his environment, as someday he'd need to know how to go somewhere on his own. Street signs would be of no use to him. The map table was where the teacher kept a specially designed map of the United States. Like a puzzle, each piece was the outline of a state. Students would take out a state, identify it by shape, and put it back in the proper spot. Each state was labeled in Braille with raised outlines indicating rivers. Mounds indicated hills, and mountains were mounds with sharper points. Jane was relieved when she heard the teacher call Mario up to the table. She liked the quiet, studious boy. His precise and intelligent answers to the teacher's questions were unlike any of the other boys. He didn't make vulgar sounds or frighten her like the other boys. Mario, Jane whispered, I'm terrible at geography. I don't know how to do these maps. From the moment he first heard Jane's voice in the 4th grade, Mario was smitten. He had no idea what she looked like, but it didn't matter. He liked what he heard, the softness of her voice and her intelligent answers to the teacher's questions. Her voice sounded kind, never sharp. He longed to hear more, but boys were forbidden to speak to the girls outside of class. In the mid-1920s, the school had separate dining halls, playgrounds, and indoor playrooms for the sexes. Between classes, hall monitors made sure that nothing was said, nor physical contact made between boys and girls. Only in 6th grade did the school begin to allow limited interactions between the sexes during instructional time. One sec. It's not so hard. Look, feel this one. It's the state of Florida. He held the cutout of the state and reached toward Jane. The 13-year-old extended her hand. Not wanting to drop it, Mario covered her soft hand with his own as he passed the piece to her. The electricity startled them both, and Mario quickly removed his hand. It was the first time he'd ever touched a girl's hand. He had no sisters and only played with Charlie and their male neighborhood friends. Jane also had no experience with the opposite sex. Since she had no brothers and the school rules strictly prohibited any teaching or any touching between the sexes, she never felt the roughness of a boy's hand. Both Mario and Jane liked that new sensation, but remembered to keep focused on their assignment. Jane held the puzzle piece with her left hand and ran her fingers around the smooth edges. I didn't know that Florida was so long and skinny. Where's Indiana? I've always wondered how our state is shaped. Encouraged to show off his knowledge, Mario thought it proper to take her hand and show her the state. With his hand over hers, they traced the major Indiana rivers and felt the southern Indiana hills. The teacher was apparently not concerned with enforcing the no touching rule and allowed the two to continue exploring the puzzle. With Mario's help, Jane began to understand the geography of the state. While she'd seen maps many times in public school, she'd only been able to see splotches of colors, such as blue for the Great Lakes, but she couldn't see the outlines on regular maps, so she had no idea of the shape of each state. Mario and Jane spent a long time that day feeling the shape of each state and putting them back into the correct place. Both were surprised that the teacher had allowed them so much time together, but neither complained and neither forgot that day at school.
Wow. Wow. I was like, oh, she's done already? Beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you, Lori Whitney. I agree. Beautiful story is what Lori was saying, and I agree. So what do you think? Did your parents know that you were going to write this book?
No, they passed long before. Mom died in 1999, and Dad was in 2005 or six. Yeah.
And what do you think they would say to you if they knew this book was here? How would they feel about their story being in such a way?
They were interviewed many times because the press just loved their story. So I have clippings. When I went to newspapers.com, I found over 4,000 times my dad, at least, is mentioned. in newspaper things. But a lot of that was because he was a judge, and every single time he sentenced someone to jail or gave him a fine, that was in the paper. So back then they put everything in the paper. Mario Peroni and his dog Carla are speaking to the Boy Scouts tomorrow at 2:00.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was in the paper. But they also interviewed my parents. I remember when my dad was running for a second judge back when I was in high school, senior. Some woman came and interviewed my parents, my mother, took pictures of her cooking and setting the table and doing household stuff, petting the cat and writing all these very nice things. But my mother, when I read the article to her, got so upset at the very end. It was sappy. And she said something about how the person quoted her and she said, I never said we see with our hearts. That's just tacky and sappy. But they made it up. And so mom was sensitive to press coverage, and the dad, I think, liked it. He was interviewed a whole lot. One was in a national magazine before I was born. So that's sort of fun. Anyway, what would they think? I think they'd be pleased, mostly because I knew that there's so many good stories. I didn't want them to be lost. And they would be lost if I hadn't pulled them together. I wanted it for my siblings. I wanted it for my children, my grandchildren.
Right.
They don't
right. And all the people coming.
Yeah.
In the future. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Just amazing and just so romantic when you were reading about, holding the Florida peace and them never having touched the opposite sex's hands. Just so many beautiful, touching moments in this story. And so they were married for a total of how many years?
Oh, over 50, 53, I think it was. Yeah. Long time.
Lori Whitney says she wonders what your mom felt having her first child.
Yeah. Joy. Mom and dad didn't get married till after he could prove that he could earn a living as a lawyer, which, who's going to hire a blind lawyer? Turns out a lot of people did. But it's slow at first, building up your practice. So they got married in 1941, just before Pearl Harbor. And then a couple years later, Anne was born. She was born in 43. And, they faced a lot of resistance to blind people getting married, from society, from friends.
Who ever heard of such a thing?
I know, and family. And to top it all off, my mother was born and raised a Protestant. So she had to, and my dad was Catholic. So she converted against her parents' wishes, I think, to Catholicism and married in the Catholic Church and stayed Catholic. But so having a baby, I'm sure, was terrifying, because that was also when I was writing about that. I was thinking, she didn't have access to too many children. Now, her sisters had children, but they didn't live close by. So it wasn't an everyday kind of thing, but she just did everything by touch. So I asked her, Mom, how did you change diapers? I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, with those big old pins and stuff.
Yes, because they did not have paper diapers.
They didn't have Pampers.
That's right. She said, I always put my fingers between the baby and the diaper pin. And I said, oh my God, Mom, didn't you get poked? She said, oh yeah, I got poked a lot, but she did not.
Better me than the baby.
She was careful with the baby. And then she had to wash the diapers. And that was back in the days of like the old wringer washers, that you wash stuff in here and then you had to squeeze out the water and then you had to hang up these diapers.
So did your parents feel you always see on television and movies, the blind person is feeling someone's face to tell what they look like. Is that real?
You know what? I don't remember that, but probably as a baby, I'm sure she did, because, well, actually.
Right. How did they get to know what you looked like?
Not only that, but she wanted to make sure we were clean. That was a very big deal for her. That I can remember, when you're little, she's getting a washcloth wiping off our face after we ate, and we also had clean clothes all the time when we were out and about, because she wanted us to be perfect. She knew she was being judged as a mother. How can that blind woman take care of those kids? So
she'd be ashamed of herself, bringing children into this world with her. I could just hear it.
Yeah. What is she thinking? But the other people were really supportive, which was nice. But yes, they're both stories. People that were like, "Wow, how does she do that?" And others were like, she has no right to have children.
Right.
But she was worried that if we were less than perfect, she would have us taken away. The CPS would come and take us away.
Oh, poor thing. Listen, you guys, you've had a little, been able to, this book tastes great. Now you've had a little taste of it. Go and get the entire thing. Here is Mary Harper's website, maryharper.com. And then along the bottom scrolling, you can see where to find her on Facebook. Now, you guys know how those Amazon links are. They got all, it is as long as the day is long. So I've taken the liberty because I know you won't catch it if I just throw that big old thing on the screen. So it is at the very top of your thread in the comment section. So at the conclusion here in just a minute, head over, click on it, get yourself a copy of the book, and really, really dive inside this most beautiful and touching, not just love story, but hope story. That's how I feel about it. And Mary, great job. I really listen. When I got a feeling you're not finished. I have a feeling there's going to be more. If nothing else, go and find out how rare this is, because I think you might be surprised with what you find. Kids that were raised by two blind parents. So for those of you out there who don't have any issues with sight, who don't have any issues with things, being stacked somewhat against you, take this story for what it is and get the inspiration that is within it. That's what I pray for all of you. Mary Harper, Mary Harper, Mary Harper. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. I honor you. Continue your great work, and you're welcome back anytime. Any last words for the audience?
We are getting ready to get it on Audible. So it'll be in an audiobook, but I'm waiting for the reader to read the opening and closing parts, and then we'll get it up.
That's exciting news. There you go. Going to be on Audible. That's my ticket. That's what I go for. Listen, again, thank you so much. What an honor. Beautiful story.
Thank you.
Beautiful story. You guys, it was also an honor to be here with you as always. Come back tomorrow. The guest tomorrow is Carl Pontek, and he too has a story that is going to shock you. I saved him for Friday on purpose. Now, listen, get out of here. Go and find just a little piece of your higher self and scoot it right over to what you already are right now. Take great to greater, bright to brighter, strong to stronger, but most importantly, nice to nicer. I tell you every day as we leave that I love you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. See you tomorrow. Have the best day ever. Thank you, Mary. Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Show me your soul. Baby, I'll show you mine. Show me your soul. Honey, it's way past time. How explicit do I have to be? Need I spell it out before you get it, baby? Show me your soul. And honey, I'll show you mine. I'll show you mine. Oh, I'm standing right here holding up a sign, shamelessly displaying my state of mind.